started.
Ready to go? All right, let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And the first thing is old business, 418 Martin Avenue, amended COA for renovations to include carport.
What this is the new owner has requested a permission to demolish the carport on the rear of the house that was added on sometime in the 50s or 60s. The demolition of the whole house was permitted by y'all in 2019. That permission expired in October of 2022. There's a 2-year time limit on it. And also the most recent additions, recent COA from y'all and by the current owner did not specifically mention his plans to demolish the carport, but clearly from the plans that were submitted with it, there's no carport shown on there. But we figured that in the best interest of getting it before y'all, it really ought to come back to you for just as an amendment to a active COA, but with the provision to update it to allow the demolition of the carport on the rear.
So let me ask.
Will you turn your microphone on? Thank you.
So we approved the demolition, it's expired. Are we approving the demolition for the house again or just the carport?
Just the carport. That's what his building permit is for the demolition of the carport itself. That's
so
all.
Are they improving the structure?
Yes, they've made some repairs to it. The repairs are ongoing right now.
Okay, we've already approved that then.
Yes, those repairs were approved by y'all just a few months ago. The plans that were submitted at that time clearly do not show the carport on the rear of it. They show other things. But that was not specifically called out in either his application or in y'all's approval. So just to make sure that it's all in the record, they'd be best just to bring it to you.
I make a motion to approve the amended COA for 418 Martin Avenue.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I guess the motion is approved.
Thank you.
And we'll proceed there. All right, continuing on, new business, 1211 Bowen Avenue, Patrick Gray, request for certificate of appropriateness for renovations.
Okay. Yeah, this is a ranch-style house. You can see it's on the corner of Russell and Bowen. It's in the Bowen Historic District. There's a photo of it in the corner of your packet report. And just the homeowner's here to explain what's going on. But just the most significant part of it is to paint the exterior brick to a pale blue, and then also the trim, paint that also. Also do various replacements of windows, replace the windows with some brick, filling those in, replacing exterior door, replacing sliding doors and French doors, various changes to the exterior of the house that really are, given the Bowen Avenue district, these are consistent with the requirements for that. And I believe the homeowner is here. He has some other minor amendments he'd like to discuss with you too.
Okay, and I've already seen that they've actually started, or you've actually started.
Thank you.
Second.
You're really good at this.
Well, one of these days I'll be able to do without you. But it won't be soon.
Okay. Yeah, the only changes, just wanted to add that on the north elevation, where we had listed that we're going to fill in that door and put a window, that no longer want to put a window there, just re-brick that to match the exterior wall. And then I just wanted to ask about the windows. I had originally planned to do a vinyl composite, but in submitting this application and following the guidelines there, have aluminum windows in this application. But I would, and seeing some of the other homes in the neighborhood do seem to have some of that more modern vinyl composite window that may not have even been available when these guidelines were put together. But it's, going back to the aluminum window to preserve the look of the existing home. I'm not sure what we're trying to preserve there. But, it's a much better window. It looks better. So I'd like to go with that vinyl composite to be more consistent, actually be more consistent with the other homes in the neighborhood.
All right, so let me ask you this. Is it a vinyl window with a, I guess it's a flat finish, so it looks like it's wood from the road?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's going to preserve the look.
Yeah. Well, the look of this house is kind of that 1970 cheap aluminum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which we don't want to preserve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
I agree.
if I follow the guidelines, that's what I have to do. And I prefer to do some, put a better window in that looks better. So,
Okay. Yeah, there's a vinyl that actually looks a lot more like a wood finish that looks and fits better in the neighborhood.
yeah.
And yeah, the aluminum doesn't fit, if you ask me. Okay.
All right.
Any other?
That's it. Thank you.
Now, I see you're painting the brick. Are you actually just painting, or are you coating the brick also to make it a, what do you call it, plaster-like finish?
I'm sorry, what was
So the exterior of the house, you're painting the brick?
Yes.
Now, are you coating the brick or just painting the brick?
The plan is just to paint it.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Where is it that you wanted the window, you don't want to replace a window?
On the rear of the home,
Okay,
there's a door.
yeah,
I had submitted to fill in the door and then put a window above it.
right.
The plan is now just to
Just
fill
to
it in,
fill it all
not have a
in.
window.
Okay.
Mr. Gregg?
Yes, sir.
NDAH has a number of recommendations against painting brick, painting masonry, and so forth, and their reasons for having that are structural, not aesthetic.
Uh-huh.
And of course, your house being what it is in that neighborhood, when it was built and so forth, that's not going to affect our decision. I just wanted to ask you if you're familiar with those recommendations and the reasons for them, and because there are some ways with you and your contractor, or if you're doing it yourself, to do it properly and not damage the structure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, but yeah, I've got a good friend of mine's a good painter, so I trust him. So,
I make a motion to approve the COA for 1211 Bowen Avenue with the amendment to not replace on the rear of the house a window and to brick where the door and window were, and also to use
favor? Aye. Aye. Motion is approved, and
This will go to the Board of Aldermen next Tuesday evening in the same place, 6 o'clock, for final approval. You don't have to be in the meeting.
Did you hear any about?
I don't have to be there.
You do not have to be there.
Okay, good.
I mean, if you want to, it's kind of interesting, the meeting's kind of interesting, but
Good.
you don't have to be there unless you don't want to. Then we can on consent, and then you can then get your building permits, typically the Wednesday after the board meetings.
and thank you, because it's beautiful, or it's beautiful to see this house being taken care of.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, new business is 206 Washington Avenue. Connie Moran requests for COA to install porch ceiling fans.
Yes, you may be familiar with this house. It's on Washington. Obviously, it's like, I think, just north of LaFontaine. As you can see, there's no ceiling fans right now on it. And ceiling fans are were not in existence at the time the house was built, but they have been a pretty common addition to houses both on Washington and on Jackson Avenue in this historic district in the past few years. So it's not out of character to add fans. So that's why we're recommending approval, that it is consistent with the character of the area. The other request is to do an emergency repair of a window on the upper floor. It's on the south side of the house because it's been damaged by rot, and our plan is to, I think, replace it with wood if possible, what she had said. But a lot is going to depend on what's available.
Something tells me it's not going to be wood.
Yeah, that'd be very likely. It's
You could really wish that it would be, but realistically.
yeah.
Okay. I see a picture of the fan, which is very good.
Well, it'll make the porch more usable.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, just to me, it's consistent with the guidelines state that porches are an important venue for the houses, and by doing something that is modern but makes it more appropriate for porches to be used, that would be supported the guidelines.
I think they did a great job of selecting something that looks similar to the actual light that's hanging there already.
Make a motion that we approve the COA for the installation of 2 ceiling fans on the front porch at 206 Washington Avenue, and to replace the upstairs window as described.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
It's aye also. So the motion passes. The next item is approval of minutes.
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
For administrative items, there's nothing on the agenda. Obviously, no audience requests. So the last one is commission discussion demolition.
I think that was 418 Martin. Is that correct?
No.
Hmm?
No, that's what I asked you.
Oh. Okay, I'm sorry.
I believe that, that was Carolyn's intention to discuss with them about, the 50-year.
Oh, the 50, excuse me, okay. Yeah, that the board, I forget which alderman it was, has suggested that the UDC has a provision that in addition to historic districts, but that any dwelling, any structure that's over 50 years old has to go to the Board of Aldermen for approval of its demolition. It's been suggested that since that's getting into the 70s now, and the number of buildings, houses, and other things that would fit that criteria, maybe that 50-year rule should be looked at instead of maybe put it back to a specific date, like prior to 1950 or prior to 1960. But anyway, just basically to amend in some fashion just the 50-year-old requirement. Could do away with it completely, change it, but just wanted to bring that up for some discussion. I don't know if you want to discuss it now or have a chance to think about it, and email Amanda with some provisions, some ideas, or discuss it at the next meeting.
The
Or just
purpose being that it should be 70 years rather than 50, and
that's an option. Could just simply change the number. Could put a specific year on it. There's any number of ways to go about doing it. But just the thought that because of the number of houses that were built in the 70s, the number of demolition requests is going to increase substantially in a few years. Plus, is there a overriding reason to do that?
Was it discussed about just eliminating that, making it administrative through the building official?
That could be again, that's another option.
The
Is
Mississippi
to
Department of Archives and History has no input on it. They don't have a rule like that. It's just something that was put into place over a specific building back in the early 2000s, early 90s, something like that. So that's how it ended up with the UDC. The state archives doesn't have any regulations on that. So it's
So I
strictly.
can give you two arguments against. Number one, 1970 designs I don't think to be considered very historic, nor exactly, not to be harsh on it, but the second thing is being born in 1967, I don't consider myself to be beyond historic.
you're a youngster.
Yeah, a young pup.
But an opportunity for us to, I mean, if we were to set something like that and say houses built prior to whatever, or 70 years ago, would there also be a way to preserve specific, certain important properties? Because there were a few important architects and a few important buildings in the 70s.
That's another way of looking at it.
They're not. These are all. They're talking outside historic districts.
Yeah, right.
yes, these would be just right.
So are you being very specific about like the Ishii homes?
Yeah.
And that's a very good way of looking at it.
Yes,
Because, yeah, I mean,
Some of them were significant.
And if you make it, like a 75-year rule, which is going to be back here in a few years, and
yeah,
do
so,
it again.
I mean, I guess the question is, how do we define it? Because, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to be here looking at every house in the 1970s. However, there are actually very specific houses that we would be considering.
Well, it wouldn't come to you. Well, it could come to you depending on how you word it. But as of right now, anything that's outside of the district goes to the board. Every single one that is over that 50-year mark has to be approved by the Board of Aldermen. It doesn't go before another commission. It just goes straight to the board through the building department.
I was immediately thinking of the Ishii houses, the cat house.
Exactly. I mean, there are. I mean, how do you sit there and define that? And maybe is there anybody who actually could sit there and start developing something like that? To sit there and start discussing what's of value Because, I mean, I think there would be greater that's not valued, but then the ones that are of a value, like the Ishi houses, are definitely something we want to consider.
Yeah, it would take some sort of inventory of where they are to identify them.
That sounds expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly something that deserves a lot of, or at least a bit of study, because, I mean, the Ishi houses are pretty much a cornerstone of what we look in.
Well, and there's
They're
an
scattered
argument-
everywhere too.
Yes.
There's an argument to be made for the Katrina cottages too.
Okay. I would argue against them, but yes. But you're right. I mean, there are,
From a historical standpoint.
but they're much more recent.
But if there were an administrative process, it would just be somebody in the building department looking at an application and saying, okay.
Basically, yeah, unless there would have to be some sort of criteria that they would look at. Otherwise, they would just say, okay.
Yes to everything, yeah.
Yes to everything, because they have no reason not to. They would need to be
Exactly.
given some sort of guidelines of what they're looking at.
Is it possible to write it so that we could say that, with the exception of properties deemed historically important to the city of Ocean Springs, or?
And give some examples and maybe
Yeah.
some photos. Yes, that's a possibility to give some photos of examples of what should be preserved. And that's the best way to go about doing it. I've seen other communities do that, something similar to photo example of what's to be preserved, what's not, what's valuable, what isn't. I mean, we can,
That's better than nothing.
okay.
No, I mean,
I think we can work on an amendment,
Use some kind of-
and bring it to y'all at a upcoming meeting. Yeah. And add that to our list. And do we have anything for next month's agenda?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have a meeting next month. So could take some photos and present those to you next month. Okay, sound reasonable? Okay. We'll do it.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.